morning on Rock and Ruby Adventures, I would like to tell you a little story. That's funny because I've been talking to a podcaster about some of my Bigfoot stuff. And I have a favorite camping spot. And I've had a couple experiences there. I was recently talking to Darren about it, and he was like, but you've never actually had a class 1, which a class 1 sighting is when you actually see the big furry fellow. And I have. I had one at this campsite, and I was sleeping with my 2 children in my tent. It was actually Giles Ford's tent, which we had borrowed, and I don't know that we ever gave back. But it's tall. It's 7 feet tall in the middle. And it was me and my 2 children, who at that time were maybe, I'm going to go with 4 and 6, 6 and 8, something like that. They were still little. And it was late in the night. I'd been camping with a group of friends. We were on a site that's right beside the river, which seems to be a pretty predominant gotcha for me. And we had gone to sleep, and it was probably around 2 in the morning, and I had woken up, and it was a full moon, and I looked up. I don't like to sleep with my rain fly on because I like to be able to see what's outside the tent. A lot of times tents will have mesh, and then you put the rain fly on the top, and then that keeps obviously the rain off, but it also keeps you can't see what's outside. And when I'm sleeping alone with my kids, I like to know what's out there. So I had left the rain flap off, and they had fallen asleep, and we were all pretty sprawled out with our dog Gwen, who's a brown lab, and she was young at the time. And I woke up, and I was feeling really uncomfortable, and I rolled over and I looked, and up above me in the right-hand corner of the tent, which is the tent side closest to the creek, was this giant shadow of what I assumed was a very large black man. I made the assumption he was black because he was really tall and had full hair. And I had a feeling come over me at that time that was just like, okay, regardless of what size human this is, I'm a single female alone with 2 kids in this tent, and my dog isn't barking, my dog is curled up with me. So I pulled the kids in, pulled the covers over our heads, and we went back to sleep, cuddled up in the tiny corner of this tent. I woke up in the morning startled. I, surprisingly enough, got to go back to sleep, which has always struck me as weird because it was one of those times when you go back to sleep where you're like, okay, I'm just out. There was no fixing it. And out I went, woke up in the morning, and I remembered what had happened. And I'm not sure if we'd been imbibing, but not much. I had kids with me. And so I woke up in the morning, and I looked over the edge of the riverbank, which was about a 15-foot drop down to the water where we had camped. And there was a path in the blackberry bushes that led down there. I assumed it was a deer trail. But whatever this was, obviously was bigger than a deer that had crunched through. And then in there, in the river, because the river has like moss. It was in the summertime, which is when this campground's open. And as the rivers drain, moss kind of lines the bed of the river, and you can see it through the water. So if you throw a rock in, you can see where the new rock went, because it kind of squishes down that mossy stuff. Well, this morning, there was one huge footprint right there in the middle of that river. And I'd had another experience at the same place, so I took some pictures, told my girlfriends. They laughed at me like they always do. My kids giggled, and off we went. But this is the place where I camp, where I've had the most experiences. So, with that note, there's my Happy Bigfoot Part 3 Angie story. I hope you all have a great day.